everyone, and welcome to another episode of Everything Went Black. Continuing my exploration of sick Australian musicians with impeccable work ethics, please welcome Drugoth to the podcast this week. For those of you who paid attention to last year's list of best records of, actually it was published this year, but it was regarding 2023. The Into the Necrosphere rundown of the best records of 2023. You will all know that Drugoth's LP, Battles May Cease, but War is Forever, rated quite high on my list. So it was a pleasure to speak with Drugoth. We had a great conversation. It was another early morning for me, but hey, not too bad. I think I did a pretty decent job of holding up my end of the conversation. Before we get going, I just want to shout out the other horsemen. We've got a strong legion these days, and it's growing every week. And also, I'd like to thank all you guys for listening out there. We recently had our first Patreon hangout, and it was a lot of fun. And we're going to be doing much more of these. And if you want to join the Patreon, there'll be information at the end of this intro. So please stay tuned. So kicking things off, every other Monday, we have Horrorwolf 666, brought to you by Brandon Legion. Up next in the rotation, on Tuesday, Jackie Smith brings you Into the Necrosphere. On Wednesday, midweek, is Everything Went Black. I return on Thursday with Necromaniacs alongside Jeff Kashid and Mike Scandato. And Friday, Mike's brother John Draper brings us Spitball Media. Saturday is a day off, so go out now that we're into spring, take a walk, get some steady state cardio in, like that sort of thing. But on Sunday, Carl Hikera comes back with Soul Knocks, and it's day 2 of his weekly deployment of all things dark and sinister. And speaking of dark and sinister, Carl and I are full on into our collaboration known as Darkness Weaves, where we explore the work of Carl Edward Wagner. We each month we switch which podcast publishes the episode, and we're doing the Kane stories right now. Out there in the margins, the great Iblis manifestations, brought to you by the equally great Cheyenne of the equally great band Trivax, who seem to be on the rise these days, and hopefully someday they can come to the States. That would be awesome. But until then, definitely I've been enjoying their records. Their record rated very high on my list for 2023 as well. Patreon. If you want to support the show, aside from sharing it with your friends and leaving us ratings on whatever platform you listen to on, you can become involved financially. For as little as $1 a month, you get access to all the bonus content. For $5 a month, you get early access to the regular episodes. And for $25 a month, you can become a sponsor. And you guys might have noticed that Portland Distro has exited as sponsor. We've ran out our entire run, and Portland Distro is no longer sponsoring the show. Nothing scandalous happened, just that we agreed on a certain period of time, and we fulfilled our end of the deal. And now we're looking for a new sponsor. So anyone out there wants to step up, please do so. Good morning or good afternoon, sir.
Evening. Yes.
Good evening. Good evening. Yes. It's 14 hours. Doing good.
14 hours. Jesus.
Yeah, man, this is not really that much earlier than I normally start rocking and rolling on during the week, so it's not too bad.
What is it where you are?
It's it's 2 minutes to 6 a.m. So yeah, it's 0600 hours.
Yeah, that's nothing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let me just do a couple things and we get started.
No worries.
All right, so as you know, this is pretty casual. Like I do like an intro and then conversation is sort of just going. So, No formal sort of vibe or anything like that. We just sort of start going. You know what I mean?
Yeah, too easy.
All right, cool. All right, so recording. All right, here we go. So those of you out there who checked out my top records of 2023 realize that Drugoth's record uh, figured very high on my list here. So it was really cool that you took some time in your day to chat with me for the podcast. So welcome to the show, man.
Well, thank you for having me, Sensei Mike Hill.
Sensei. That's what's really cool, man, is that we've all been sort of operating independently, and everyone just sort of, because I guess of our like-mindedness, converged to this point. And there's like a really cool uh I hate to use the word community, but that's what it is. It's like a bunch of people who have the same ideas and similar ideas. And there's always known associates now, like guys like yourself and Matt Prizzo and Dave Berardi. And it just it's really interesting and really cool because, like, I've been doing everything went black for a while, and now it's sort of matured into this thing where we have a group now, and I really really like all that stuff.
The Legion, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, great work on the record last year. I just been going back through some of the other material, and pretty much from 2017 until now, there's been this like incredible amount of material that's between demos, EPs, and compilation tracks, like all sorts of stuff. So it's been a very prolific time. Um, and you also played in Spells of Torment with Matt. And but 2017, man, it just seems like there's been a nonstop onslaught of material that you've been working on. So how did things start out? Like what was sort of the genesis of this whole thing?
Um, yeah, to be honest, I went to a local black metal show in my town, and the lineup was um, from beginning to end, very good. So watching the entire show, but there was one band in particular that really stood out to me, and they were called Funeral Moon. They're not a band anymore, but yeah, they just really uh, made my evening. And ever since then, like that night in general, that was when I was like, all right, I'm no more thinking about it. I'm gonna I'm gonna begin my journey as a one man black metal project. And from there, just been doing my thing ever since.
Yeah, it's doing it as a single person um is pretty freeing, I guess. But do you ever get stuck in sort of this circle of a cycle of, is this good enough? What makes the cut? What do I throw away? That kind of stuff.
At the beginning, yes, because I was still developing and trying to figure out my sound and what I wanted to sort of steer towards. It has sort of changed over time. Like in the very beginning, early demos, there was just purely guitar, vocals, and drums, and no bass at all, just to keep it raw and punk-ish. And I came from a hardcore background and like extreme death metal sort of background as well, and punk. So I was very drawn to short length songs. So some of the very early stuff seldom was 1 minute long of a song, and just trying things, learning things, and then later on the songs got a little bit more lengthy and weren't as, I guess, grindy and short, but all of the guitar I write all of the guitar, but I'm nowhere near good enough to record it. So that's where Shograth comes in, and he's a very good guitar player. And him and I, we're on the same page. Like he understands exactly what I'm trying to go for, and he can deliver what's in my mind. But with the newer stuff and more up to date now, my guitar playing has increased and gotten a little bit better. It's still not great enough to record, but it's just easier for me to communicate the riff ideas to him, and then he can make them become a reality.
I relate to that, man, because though I do play guitar on a lot of the tunes material, I try to surround myself with guys who actually are way better musicians than me because I feel like I still have like a very punk approach to playing guitar. So drums are that's your primary instrument, right? Is drumming.
Yes, drumming is my primary instrument. I began drumming when I was 16, and yeah, ever since then, uh, just been drumming as often as I can. When I began, I was more into like death metal, so my
Mhm.
drum kit was quite large. You
Double
know,
bass
having
and like
yeah, double bass. You know, myriad cymbals and floor and rack toms and such. And just over time, I've just gotten lazier and lazier, and now it's very similar to, I guess, if you were to go into a jazz club or something, you know, my drum kit wouldn't look very much different to the drummer in a jazz band.
that's really cool because even the guy my drummer in Tombs, Justin, has the same kind of setup where we don't have he has like two kick drums, but we only use one, and there's like a rack tom, a floor tom, sometimes two rack toms when we're if you're feeling irie, but not a whole lot of cymbals, man. And it's that stripped down sort of approach. It just I think it lends to more creativity on the drums. Would you agree with something like that?
I agree. I agree. As well, for me, it depends on the project. So
Yeah,
I do drum in several projects of friends bands as well. But I try to make it each project slightly different from the other. There's all the bands are slightly different themselves, but just for my amusement, I try to have like a setup that I use for this band, and then a setup I use for that band, and just a bit of stuff like that. And as well, I've got uh I don't want to say that I have OCD or anything, but everything has to be in a certain order. Like for my Drugoth setup, I have one floor tom, the kick drum, and a snare. So three drums, and therefore I have three cymbals. So hi hats and two crash cymbals, and then that's it. So there's three cymbals, three drums, and yeah, that's just for my sanity. If I add anything else that makes those numbers uneven, I kind of it plays in the back of my mind, and shit falls apart. So
that's interesting, man. I like to play around with numbers too. My day job is there's quite a lot of math involved in my day job. So I also look at numbers and play around with numerology and stuff like that too. And yeah, it'd be interesting to dig into that. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's just it's it's probably just me. Like it's just it doesn't affect too much, but it's just me. Like it's one less thing to worry about, I think, when I'm in the situation of recording or playing live. But like for the Shograth band that I drum in, which is, my friend Shograth, who does guitar in Drugoth, it's literally the same band, but the roles are reversed. So I still play drums in Shograth, but I've got what do I have? One, two, three, four cymbals each side. So eight cymbals all up. So there's eight cymbals, but then still the same kick, snare, and floor tom setup, and single pedal. I don't use double pedal. I'm kind of not trademarking that, but I would like people to hear my stuff, or a band or a song that I've drummed on, and kind of have my own personal signature to it. And only using a single pedal, I feel, adds to my personality.
I was actually going to ask you about that, because one of the things that I really dig, especially about the new Drugoth record, is the drumming. And I was curious about that because a lot of different drummers have different ideas about using a double kick pedal versus a single pedal. And it's almost like the single pedal is almost, you mentioned you had more of a punk background and that sort of grind background, like a lot of the blasts and the grind bands was just done with single pedals.
Yeah, I personally think it sounds cooler, and for me now, if someone asks me, "Oh, you play drums," I do play drums, obviously, but I would say now I'm more of a musician and a songwriter, because I've transcended beyond just being a drummer, I believe, because I write all of the compositions, all of the riffs, all of the lyrics, and then where I'm going to place the lyrics for the vocals. So it's, at times, because I guess I'm in control of everything, I can sort of dictate where the drums need to be a bit more flashy and where they need to be more relaxed, so the guitar can be the standout, or the bass, or the vocals, or I try to share it throughout all the instruments to fit the song as best as possible. Like, I don't, the last thing I want is a million drum fills over top of a riff that's quite impressive to me, to my thoughts anyway, and then have it sort of interfere with the riff.
Yeah, that's also interesting because over the course of my involvement with music, I've run across a lot of different types of drummers, and I'm not going to name names because this guy's a really good friend of mine, but like he plays in a great band, and they have many records out, and they're all excellent players, and they write great songs. But my one criticism of this band would be that the drumming, it sounds like he's completely in a different room and in a different state than the band. Like it's just the songs become these like 3.5 minute drum solos, and almost acting against the song itself. And that there are guys like that out there too. But I've grown to appreciate, um, and I think throughout my involvement with Tombs, like doing our music over the years that we've had the band, that's when I've really grown to appreciate drummers who are songwriters, because when that interaction happens in the songwriting process, it's most people probably aren't even aware of it, but it adds so much to the song itself. Like when because the drums are a very bombastic instrument and can overpower the song if not composed correctly, and I think that's like a real skill to have.
I agree. And then when it comes to the process of writing an album's worth of music, or an EP or something, you I appreciate it when song one doesn't sound exactly the same as song two, or something along those lines. To be able to change a drum beat will completely change the direction of a song. And then I also I do drums for, like I said, several other bands, but even to the point where they may not have, they have riff ideas in their head, but they don't know where to start and how to compose the song. So a lot of the time I will actually do drum tracks and send it to them. Like, I will dictate the tempo, the direction, the speed of the songs, and then they will write their guitars to my drum tracks. But I think with my work with Drugoth and writing the music in its entirety, I can equalize and respectfully like dictate where the song's going and not showing it off too much. And as well, I like to keep it very simplistic. Like it may sound like chaos at times, but a lot of like the song structures are very, it could be made up of 3 sections, but then, it could be part one, part two, part one, part two, part three, part one. And that's a song type of thing. And then the next song, it could be 4 or 5 different parts, but the flow of the song is the most important to me anyway.
Do you record all this stuff on your own? Like, do you have a setup at home, or do you have a space or a basement or something like that where you have mics and all that gear?
It really depends on the project, and I'm quite lucky. I have probably from my house, I could throw a rock to a studio that's just down the street from me, and ever since I've been aware of it being a studio, I've taken advantage of that. And I'm actually booked in tomorrow to do drum tracking all day for the next Drugoth album. So I'm pretty excited for that. But yeah, like I said, it depends on the project. Like for Drugoth, for Shoggoth, for some other projects that I've drummed on, I go the professional route of getting a engineer who knows what he's doing, fully miking up the kit and recording it properly. And then sometimes for a little bit more DIY, like Spells of Torment is a very good example. We wanted to keep it first wave black metal, very old, shitty 80s sort of sound. So we went a very primitive and less microphones is more sort of outlook, and I think it turned out cool for what it is. And then I do like a few other like raw black metal projects, so it's those situations where if the drums, well, not the drums, but the music in itself isn't meant to sound clear and good and crispy, so I can get away with shittier recordings, but I make it work depending on the project and time and finances. But yeah, it's fun. It keeps me busy.
So I'm aware that you're working on a new album you're working on a new album. Is that record going to see the light of day in 2024?
I hope so. It's just time. That's my biggest enemy. I'm not in a rush, but there are more important things to be released before the album. I am 3/4 of the way finished a Drugoth and Shoggoth split. So that'll be pretty cool. I'm pretty excited for that. That should be, I think we've got maybe 1 or 2 sessions, like recording sessions left on it. And then, we don't really care about labels or any of that bullshit. So we just release it when we want. We don't have a timeline, or, we can't, if we finished the split next weekend, we don't have to wait 6 months for a record label to get all the promotion and all the physicals finished. We control our own destinies when it comes to music, and we just press that magic button, publish, and there you go, you get it. But it all comes down to my schedule. I rearrange for the music that I will cancel whatever to do recording sessions because it's such a high priority in my life. But then Shoggoth has other priorities. The engineer who records us has a family and a life and priorities. So it's just trying to get everybody's schedules to line up, and then we go from there. But I'm kind of got 5 projects sort of halfway done. I've started, need to finish type of things, but it's not waiting on me. It's waiting on other people and studio time and stuff like that. But it's not the end of the world. Pretty much every weekend I've got something that I need to be recording or working on or writing lyrics for, or doing whisper vocals over top of the rough demos, so then the vocalist knows where to sing, because a lot of the time I write the lyrics as well, because that's another passion of mine. I enjoy that a lot. But I'm hoping, I actually sort of counted it out in my mind this afternoon. I'm hoping there's a new Drugoth album out by the end of the year, but if not, early next year. Yeah, I'm just seeing how it goes. But the split, that's the most important thing on my mind, getting that out as soon as possible, because I'm very keen to get people to listen to more Shograth, because he is a phenomenal vocalist, and nothing infuriates me more when there's very, very talented musicians that don't use their talents. So I'm very glad that he's pulled himself together and he's on the right path, because as a vocalist, he is just one of those naturals. He just has a cigarette, drinks a little bit of coffee, has a little cough, and then just smashes out the most brutal vocals I've ever heard, and then talks completely normal afterwards. And he's the same with guitar. Like, he's just has his own personal style, and he's just a riff machine. He writes some very challenging riffs for me to drum to, but it's a good challenge for me, and we push each other musically.
Yeah, I'm just starting to get familiar with Shograth's material. I sort of backed in through Drugoth basically, and so I'm excited to hear about this, to hear this split, because it's two aspects of the same people. I think that's a very interesting concept. It's going to be different, but it's interesting just to see how two people can express themselves, putting on different masks, if you will, different vestiges to create something that's sort of opposites in some ways. Not opposites, but just different facets of each other.
Yeah, yeah. Like, it's essentially 2 different bands made up of the same members. But so, for instance, I'm the main vocalist in Drugoth, obviously, and he does the lower, deeper backing vocals in Drugoth. And then in Shograth, he takes the forefront and is the main vocalist. But then I assist him here and there with backing vocals when it's needed. And same thing, he writes all the guitar for Shograth, where I write all the guitar for Drugoth. And then when it comes to the drums, I write drums for him, like with what I know. We're almost in sync. Like, I know how he thinks, and I know from the bands that he really loves to listen to what he's after, and what I think he would enjoy. But a lot of the time, I will do, say, several different versions of a song or a part in a song. And then when I am recording it, I have him present, and I give him the options. I'm like, okay, well, this is one option. It could be fast, could be a little bit slower. And then this is another one. And I let him pick which one he likes. And so far, I've had a hole in one, and everything that I think that he will enjoy the most, or go for, seems to be the one. Like, we seem to be on the same page. So that's been lucky for me. And yeah, the split should be really cool. I think there's a few surprises along the way for it, and I think everybody who's familiar with uh, Drugoth, Shoggoth, the Legion, all the podcasts, and our little community. Oh, I don't want to say community like you said, but
No, that's a good word, but it's like a cliched word in some ways because it's
yeah,
overused. But in this case, I
yeah,
feel like it's true.
yeah, I agree. And it is like it's a small, almost a family. And I find I was talking to Shoggoth about it recently after a recording session. It's because we both come from a hardcore background, like hardcore punk, and when we grew up, it was very, they're like, oh, who's this guy and who's that guy? Oh, I don't
Mhm.
know him, so he must be an outsider, and that guy doesn't have, straight edge tattoos, so he must be a nobody, and I don't know this guy and that guy, and I didn't like that. I It's a two-sided coin. I appreciated the gatekeeping because I respect it to a point because you're so passionate about it. But at the same time, I wish they were more welcoming to outsiders.
Yeah.
And then, and so I sort of got out of that um, scene, I guess, just because it sort of it turned to shit. Like it wasn't really about the music; it was more about how many face tattoos you can have and all of this sort of more image than music. And then I turned more into death metal, which was fun. And then same thing, it was like, oh, how come this band is getting a support slot for this international touring band? We're better than them. It was just a lot of backstabbing and ego flexing. And then when I delved into black metal, which I was always aware of and a fan of, but I will never forget that original show that I was telling you about at the beginning, where I saw Funeral Moon, which then really solidified me as going in this direction. I remember I parked my car maybe 800 meters away from the venue because I'm petrified of people going near my vehicle, and I was walking with my wife to the venue, and across the street from me was a random person in a Dark Throne shirt, and I was probably wearing a shirt or something like a black metal band. I can't recall, probably a Bathory shirt or something. But he looked at me, I looked at him, our eyes locked, and he just like nods and gives me the horns from across the road. And my wife looked at him, looked at me, and I just waved back and gave him the horns as well. And she said, "Do you know that guy?" And I said, "No, I've never met that person in my life." And from that moment on, I knew, like, some people may be basement dwellers that, listen to nothing but Burzum and Leviathan and seldom see the sun. And some people are just normal people who work full time, 5 days a week, and have a family. But we are all in it for the music. We're not about the imagery. We're passionate about the music and what it brings us. And I find that very inspiring.
I'd have to agree with you on that because I have always felt like black metal was more of like a outsiders, individualist sort of music scene, for lack of a better term. Once again, there's those cliches because you know people talk about being true, but the thing is like I think being true is just being an individual, and that aligns more with like a satanic sort of philosophy than worshiping the devil or some Christian idea of what Satan is.
Yeah. And even if some people are, they believe in, say, Satan and anti-Christianity, or then there's some people who are more towards the universal thinking of nature is what's causing everything, or what they worship. Even if there is slight disagreements, or different views. There's no animosity. There's a lot of acceptance.
That's true, actually. It's the different styles of philosophical beliefs always align for the most part. But in contrast to that, like go back to hardcore and punk, it very rarely aligns. Like there's so many little segments of those scenes, and they all seem to be at odds with each other. And that's what alienated me from hardcore and punk, like when I was younger. Because I didn't grow up in a city. I grew up well in the suburbs, about maybe 60 miles north of New York City. And there was very few people who were even into any cool music at all. And once I discovered certain things, it was like the early days of hardcore and punk, and you know, then I discovered that, oh well, you have to be this type of person if you want to listen to this band. And then if you listen to that band, like if you're into like Poison Idea or something like that, you can't really be into Judge. It's like you have to pick the side. You either a scumbag who likes Poison Idea, or you're some like douchey straight edge guy who listens to Judge. And I
Yeah,
just wasn't
yeah,
I wasn't having it, man. I liked everything. I mean, I really did not like a lot of the straight edge music. Like I was, more into like the darker sort of stuff like Black Flag and, Poison Idea and bands like that. But it just got so segmented, and more and more, even throughout the 90s and throughout the early part of the 21st century, there's more and more like segments of that scene, like emo and screamo and whatever, metalcore. Um, that just it became more about like what you were saying earlier, like style and what you're wearing, or if you have a lip ring, or face tattoos, or whatever, colored hair, like that sort of stuff. And I always felt like black metal was like really individual, like people who sort of went lived their lives in the way that they wanted to live their lives. And it still is like accepting in a way, because man, there have been guys like that. There's a guy at my gym who like he was wearing a black metal t-shirt, and immediately we were like on the same page. And that's just a cool thing.
yeah, I agree. And like you were saying before, like I love Hatebreed. The Rise of
Yeah.
Brutality was the first Hatebreed album I heard when I was like 15 or 16. And I was like, this is nuts. I love this shit. And it's like the tough guy, violent hardcore with breakdowns and stuff. But then flip of the coin again, I also love very old AFI and like the
Sure.
early punk hardcore stuff. And like Discharge, well, Discharge is like what, D beat, but whatever.
Yeah.
There's all these subgenres and all this shit, but you got to look at it from the big picture. It's still extreme music to a degree.
That's interesting because like late last year we did a bunch of dates with All Out War, who are like the hardest of the hardcore. You know what I mean? They're like, OGs, man. They're very much in that scene. But when I listened to All Out War, I was like, God, these guys are like a metal band, you know what I mean? But Mike, the singer, and I became friends over the years, and he would often criticize their fans because they did not see the similarities between very metallic hardcore and like death metal and black metal. And so the new All Out War record actually has like a lot of very, very blackened parts to it as well. And Mike loves all kinds of music. He's into, Bath. Actually, he wore a Bathory shirt. That was like his gig shirt, was his Bathory shirt. And
Yeah,
all the guys in the band are into everything. They're all into like, death metal, hardcore, black metal, hard rock, all that stuff. And I feel like that's lost in a lot of people these days. And it's like the older dudes in the hardcore scene, like the guy, like we did a tour with Ringworm a number of years ago, and those guys are huge Kiss fans. And it's like I just wish more people had an open mind like that.
yeah. Well, even Ringworm, for example, like I guess they fall under the flag of, oh, they're a hardcore band, but they're very, very close to like death metal.
Oh
And
yeah.
then as well, like people, they're like, oh yeah, I love like Marauder, like
Oh,
they're the best hardcore band. But one of their biggest influences, I'm assuming, is fucking Slayer.
oh yeah,
And like
big
you
time.
put there's Slayer riffs in Marauder songs, and people are like, oh, I hate, thrash metal, I hate all that death metal shit. And it's like, well, it's they it's like, once again, a two-sided coin. You can't really have one without the other.
Yeah, I mean I don't know this guy. I didn't know him very well, but Saab, the primary creative force in Marauder, like who passed away a number of years ago. He was very much into all kinds of music. Like I'd seen that guy at like goth nights at, in the city and things like that. And I never really knew him, but the band was a band that I was like a huge fan of. And we have a lot of friends in common, but yeah, that the tougher like DMS crew thing, I always kind of stayed away from dudes like that really too, but the yeah, that band is like influential on a lot of people. And and that probably comes from a wide bandwidth of influences, and yeah, it's just I always thought that was perplexing to me. Like, we did those dates at All Out War, and there were people there who came to see, Tombs, and there were people who came to see All Out War. And it wasn't like there was like people who just wanted to see both bands. It was like, why can't I mean I watched both bands, or I mean I watched All Out War every night too, but it was like I'm interested in both things. So what's wrong with that? And I think Mike actually from the stage was just like criticizing people to being like, there's not much difference between what we do and what bands like Tunes do, and it's true. But yeah, that's like a tangent, that's like a peeve of mine that that it just perplexes me sometimes.
Yeah, and then I guess it makes me really respect bands and artists more who have the mindset of, I don't want to really fit into a particular genre or style of extreme metal. I'll just sort of make my own in a way. And the first band that comes to mind is Crowbar.
Oh yeah.
They're from you know uh the South, and like there's no band that sounds like Crowbar. It's like bluesy, it's heavy, but they're not a doom band because they got like sort of like hardcore sections. But I don't know, you hear them and you're like, yeah, that's Crowbar immediately. And then even I guess on a more extreme version like Meshuggah, like what would,
Mhm.
I don't even know what you would class them as. They're in a league of their own almost.
Yeah, they have their own style for sure, and they definitely spawned a whole like there are bands who totally worship them, that
Yeah,
you can tell that that's their main influence. And but Meshuggah started off like a little bit different too. Like back in their earlier records weren't as like they didn't have that kind of rhythmic sort of thing going on, but that developed over years. And
yeah,
that's
they're
what I
a little
really
bit
love about
thrashy.
them. Yeah, yeah, they
Yeah,
were
yeah.
definitely thrashy in the beginning. And that's that's the thing I love about just music in general when you have a band that you like and you see them change over time. You go through the course of their catalog, you can see how they've developed and different things come and go. And oh, this is the era when they were doing that, and this is the thrash era when they started. And Meshuggah is like a perfect example of that. And that record that came out, was it last year? They had a new album. Was it 2023?
Yeah, Immutable. That
Yeah,
was yeah, that was a masterpiece. As
and
well,
it
it
came out
was,
early in the year too, right? I think.
yeah. And
Yeah.
you knew what, like, it's a Meshuggah album from the get-go. You know exactly what you're in for, but at the same time, they still pushed it to the ultimate extreme.
Yeah, the opening track on that record was very unique, I thought.
Yeah,
And that for some reason that's the problem these days when record and there's so much great music that comes out. And especially in obviously in metal, that's like in my opinion the most creative style genre of music. and black metal specifically the most creative like subgenre. Because, but yeah, the problem is when you release an album early in the year, by the time the end of the year comes up, there's been a whole slew of incredible other records that came out that you sometimes have more of a recency bias with the later records of the year, you know?
Yeah, I think I've done it. I can't. Yeah, once now with Carl Hikara, he gets me in to do my top 15 of the
Uh-huh.
year. He asked me last year, and I was a bit taken aback because I never really care for making a list or any of that thing. But I took it the opportunity, and so I went in there 100% and really did my research and made a list, etc. And I've already began it this year as well because he's asked me to return, and it is hard, but at the same time, I'm unbelievably fussy, and I like what I like, and I don't like. I appreciate, like, example, the new Deicide album. It's very, very good, but will I go back to it? Probably not. Maybe here and there if I feel like listening to Deicide, something new that I don't know every riff, every word, etc. from like Legion or something. I will revisit the newest album, but uh, it was good. It wasn't great. That's what I'm going to leave it at. Compared to a band that I discovered this morning. Yeah, my morning, Friday morning. They're from Germany. They're called Naxen, I believe it's pronounced. Never heard of them before, and it just popped up on one of those transmissions from the Dark Arts YouTube channels, or one of those very good YouTube channels that just pump out real good underground black metal. And I was drawn to the artwork more than anything, and the album title uh, really caught my eye. At 5:30 in the morning, it's descending into a deeper darkness, and I was like, they've put effort into that name. It isn't just something cliche or a few random sort of popular words. Like, there always seems to be the same sort of words going around for album names or song names lately, in particular subgenres of black metal especially. But yeah, I was very drawn to it, and then I listened to the entire album on my drive to work this morning, and I was just like, holy fuck. I think I
Yeah.
sent it to a good handful of my friends who are also into the music, and I was like, you got to check this shit out, because it's like, I don't even know, I couldn't even describe what it's like. It's just very gloomy, almost like Celeste, like that French sort of
Oh yeah. Okay.
style. I'll send it to you. It's very worth
I
checking
just
out.
I just
And as
brought it up.
well,
I just brought it up on
yeah,
Bandcamp actually. I'm going to check this out for sure. I mean, it sounds like right up my
yeah,
alley. Yeah.
it's very dark, and I really appreciate when bands are able to do it well, where the entire album, I think it's only 4 songs, but they're about 10 minutes long each or something, but where they all the songs flow together, so it sounds like one very long song. They seem to execute that perfectly.
And that's the thing about today. It's like, 'cause I don't like the new Deicide record actually. It's just of course I checked it out. It just feels like this is a random thing that comes to mind when I first listened to it. It's like it's almost like a like an like a doctor in your insurance network. You go to a doctor's appointment and he just kind of looks at you. All right, okay, great, and he collects money from your insurance agency, just doing his job. Just collecting checks, charging invoices. That's my feeling about the new Deicide record. It's like, okay, we need to make a new album. Let's get that click track at like 220 BPM and see what comes out, and we'll package it up and send it out to everyone because we know we'll sell a certain number of records or get a certain number of downloads, and then we'll go out on tour and play all the old songs. That's the feeling I got from that record.
A little bit, yeah, and I agree. To me, the first thing that came to mind is I use it as a description when I'm recording drums, especially, is it sounds like you're trying to piss through a newspaper. Like there's no, it's it's just papery. There's no depth to the drums, or there's no thickness. Like when I listen to death metal, I want it to just be a wall of thick molasses sound.
Mhm.
I want to feel I guess, the gritty and shittiness of it, and I didn't feel that on this particular album, but it was I guess what are we, 2024? On the same day there was a new Diocletian album, which made up for that, and I think the new Dark Throne album came out on that day too. And I I try to give everything a chance with an open mind, but I couldn't get through one song of that new Dark Throne. I've given up on that band, but some people like it. Some people think that it's just a shit sort of crappy garage recording, and if it didn't have the Dark Throne sticker slapped on it, no one would give two shits about it. But here we are.
Yeah, I've grown very cynical of Dark Throne, honestly. I love obviously the classic records, Panzerfaust and all those incredible early albums. Um, Transylvanian Hunger, like great dark emotional music. But and so like that mid-period, like later period rock style they were doing, there was like some interesting stuff they did, but I just think to myself now, it's like I almost feel like they're taking a piss every time they make a record.
I don't know. I was thinking about it, like, even if they sort of left Dark Throne alone, or they sort of put it on pause, and I'm pretty sure Fenriz is releasing a album. I don't know what it is, but it's almost like classic heavy metal, and he's doing vocals on it. But like, just do a different project.
Yeah.
Same members, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just put a
Yeah.
different name on it. Like, keep these things separate. But I agree. Like, I obviously like, the the OGs, like Transylvanian Hunger's, I think, my favorite of the albums. But at the same time, I'm a very big fan of Hate Them, and like Ravishing Grimness and Sardonic Wrath. I
Okay.
think was very, very good. But that it got a little bit uh I don't know, less like grim and full on blast beats. It got a little bit uh I don't know, like Motorheadish,
Yeah.
which I'm
Yeah.
I'm definitely not opposed to. I'd love that shit. But yeah, I don't know. And like we were saying before, bands obviously progress and they go through sort of stages, but I don't know why
Yeah.
why fuck up something that's working really well, but each to their own, I guess.
I'd be interested in Fenris doing a classic heavy metal record, actually. I think it'd be cool if he just called it Fenris, and he did his interpretation of classic heavy metal. And that I think would be great, rather than like trying to package it as a Dark Throne record or something. I think that'd be really cool. And I think tons of people would dig it. And then you can have like, guests on it and whatever.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool. Like when Abath was a part of Immortal, they did a side project album just called I. The
Hmm.
album's called Between Two Worlds, and it's very, very good. But it was because they're drawn to classic metal, and they love Motorhead and stuff like that. So it's still Abath on vocals, still playing guitar. It's just a little bit less grim and frostbitten as what Immortal is. So I'm all for it when bands sort of just do a one-off, even a couple of albums that are just of the same ilk but slightly different, maybe down a different pathway. But and then out of that, now that Abath is no longer with Immortal, he's doing his solo project, which is, in my opinion, fantastic. Those three Abath albums are fist fuckingly good. And yeah, I don't know. in a way, the listener is the true victor, because you get an immortal album every, what, 3 or 4 years from Demonaz and whoever else he has in the band. I think Hog left, but I don't know. That's their problem. And then you, on the opposing side, you get an Abath album every 3 or 4 years. So as a listener and a fan of all of those sort of projects within the Blashrick world, I'm coming off number one because I'm getting double the output from both of them. And as well, I would assume they're trying to one up each other each release.
I imagine.
As
Definitely.
as petty as that sounds, but
Oh,
I'm all for it.
grown men are not above pettiness for sure. That's clear.
Oh yes, I'm very petty, but in a positive way. Like I remember I was watching. Speaking of Deicide earlier, there was a Glenn Benton interview I watched. It was on a podcast maybe a year ago or something, and the final question of the podcast was, what motivates you to keep doing what you're doing in such an extreme band for so long? You've been doing it for however many decades, and what's your biggest motivation to continue doing this? And all he says is like a one-word answer, and he just says revenge. And that really resonated with me. It's like all the people that said that, you got to grow up and get a real job, or you'll grow out of that, or this or that. It's like, nah, fuck you. Like, I'm still doing this shit. This is the ultimate revenge. Every song I write, every album I put out, every show I play, it's proving you wrong every time. And that's my level of pettiness. It's continual, it's unending.
It's awesome, man. That's a great motivator because I have the same sort of outlook as well. That's awesome. So with the lyrically, what's your process for that? Do you have a notebook? Do you have the songs first? The lyrics are something you work on continually? What's your approach to writing lyrics?
Well, I'm lucky. I write lyrics for Drugoth. Um, I write lyrics for a I I'm a part of several bands, and each
Yeah.
one is different, so it's good. And there's some have themes, some don't. But yeah, as a lyricist for several of them, I can, if I get sort of, I guess, writer's block or something on one of them, I can just jump to the other. And I've my phone, the notes app is just chock a block with just, it's very neat and everything is in order, but there's a lot of shit in there. Like, there's the Drugoth stuff in there. I write lyrics for a new project that we've released a demo called Lyr, Lyr, and it's more of a raw black metal, but very influenced by the band Mantiel and Burzum's Philosophem, like very lengthy and almost monotonous and repetitive raw black metal. And I write the lyrics for that. And once I get an idea, I really dive in head first. And we are working on an album for that band. And I've just finished all the lyrics, and all the songs are written. The vocals just need to be recorded and then mix and mastering. And then that should be out this year. But yeah, that the lyrics for that came about quite easily, and it was really more the music sort of told me the direction of what the lyrics were going to be, which has never really happened to me before. So that was something new, and that was fun. And then with another band, it's more of a punk black metal band called Christbane that I drum and write the lyrics for as well. That one, by the name of the band, Christbane, you can probably put two and two together what the lyrics are
Oh
about.
yeah.
But that's my little freedom to sort of just be as ignorant and just repulsive as possible towards Christianity. And yeah, it's basically that. And yeah, that's fun because sometimes it's fun to write stuff that's so unimaginably hostile and unreal, but it makes me feel really good. And it's almost to the point where it's comical, but I want people to read it or listen to it and know that I am 100% serious in everything that I say as well. So there's a humor behind it, but I'm 100% serious.
Yeah, so you enjoy it because I don't enjoy writing lyrics. I think it's like the most painful thing there is.
I love it.
Yeah, that's cool though, because it good for you, man. Because I have a real I beat myself up so much when I write lyrics, and it's such a painful thing, and I'm always like concerned about all that sort of stuff.
I do struggle like with at times like trying to like say for example I've written a new Drugoth album. Um, I wrote all the music first, and then which is pretty standard, I would think. And then I had a few ideas like lyrically, but then I landed on one idea, and it came to me in the middle of the night. It was just like a short phrase, which turns out to be the album title as well. And everything that that album title represents is what each song is about. And you know, we say that it's true Udun black metal, and that's just something that Shograth and I have donned ourselves. But at the same time, we want to disassociate ourselves from the whole concept of Tolkien black metal, because I think, like me personally, when I think Tolkien black metal, I'm thinking some like summoning sort of dungeon synthy sort of shit, or something about hobbits dancing around, you know, and that's exactly what we are not. We are the more violent, primitive, beastly, violent battle music. But then, as well, when I say that, just from those words being said, I'm thinking like Amon Amarth or some weird power metal shit. But I just want to have the most violent, self-empowering lyrics to match the music, because I feel like that's what it is portraying, and that's what I'm trying to make it portray. Basically, I want, if you go into the gym, you put this on, it'll be like you've just done a, I don't know, half a kilo of pre-workout, and you're just ready to fight absolutely everybody in the gym.
It's awesome.
That's my goal.
That's a lofty goal, but I back it. That's killer, man. I appreciate that sentiment for sure, man. But so now, as far as you got so much stuff going on, uh, what is there a central place people can go, or it's all on Bandcamp or streaming services, like that sort of stuff?
Yeah, Bandcamp is the way to go. Um, I went through a bit of a stage where everything was for free because I just wanted people to listen to it. But
Right.
then I came to the conclusion that, I'm forking out a lot of money from my own pocket, which is I'm willing to do that because I love it. And it keeps, this is my life now, doing this project. And I figured if, you're willing to go to the Bandcamp page and download it for free because you want to listen to it again, it's not going to kill you if you give me $5. So everything is on Bandcamp for very, very cheap. It's also on like whatever it is, Spotify and all that other shit. But that's just more to get to as many people as possible. You know, like I said, I don't really work with labels. I don't really care for labels. I just want people to listen to it at the end of the day. Very similar to Matt Parizo. We don't give a fuck. As long as you listen to it and, you know, you like it, you don't like it, whatever, don't give a shit. Just give it a spin. That's all I can ask for.
Well, I'm looking forward to the new record. I'm also looking forward to the split. And yeah, it's gonna be, I think I'm anticipating this stuff, so it's gonna be really cool. And you know, I thank you for your time. And yeah, man, we'll be in touch and definitely look forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you for having me, Sensei.